They say the quietest betrayals are the ones that echo the loudest. I didn't believe that until the night no one said a word. My name's Bryce. I'm 51 years old. Husband, father, provider. The guy who quietly handled the bills, fixed the broken fence, showed up to school plays, grilled on the weekends, and shoveled the snow before anyone else in the house even got out of bed. The kind of man you don't notice until he's gone. And maybe not even then. For 25 years, I was married to Caroline. We met at a mutual friend's New Year's Eve party. She had a crooked smile, a dorky laugh, and a fire in her eyes that made me think, that's the girl. We built a life in a modest home in upstate New York, raised 2 kids, Emma and Jonah, and weathered all the usual storms. Layoffs, the recession, her dad's cancer, a miscarriage, my back injury from working construction too long. We didn't live a glamorous life, but I thought we were solid. I thought we were us. This story doesn't start with a bang. There was no cheating, no screaming fights, no shattered plates or dramatic ultimatums. It started like most endings do, slow, almost invisible, like water wearing down rock over time. You don't notice the erosion until you're standing at the edge of a cliff, wondering when the ground disappeared from under you. I guess if I had to pinpoint it, the first crack wasn't the anniversary itself. It was a few months before, during a family dinner. It was Emma's birthday, her 22nd. She was home from college, glowing with that buzz you only have in your early 20s when the world still feels full of unopened doors. I grilled steaks, even though it was freezing out. Jonah was holed up in his room until Caroline yelled at him to come down and be part of the family for once. Caroline herself had been distant all week, preoccupied with her phone, always scrolling and smiling at messages I wasn't privy to. We sat down to eat, and Caroline clinked her glass to start a toast. She spoke glowingly about Emma, how proud she was, how smart, how beautiful. Then she turned to me and added, "And thank God for Bryce, who cooked the only decent steak in this house." It was a joke. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But it wasn't a thank you. It wasn't "you've always been there." It was the kind of backhanded appreciation you give a waiter after they refill your drink. And for some reason, it stuck with me. Later that night, I was cleaning dishes while Caroline FaceTimed her sister. I wasn't eavesdropping, but I caught a snippet. "He's just boring lately. I don't know. It's like we talk and it goes nowhere. He gets excited about mulch." "Who gets excited about mulch?" She laughed. Her sister laughed. I dried the plate in my hand until it nearly cracked. That was the first time I realized I'd become background noise in my own life. But I didn't confront her. I swallowed it. Like I always did. Like men of my generation were raised to do. You push through. You don't whine about your wife not complimenting your hair or thanking you for vacuuming. You just do the job. Be the rock. Except rocks crack too. In the weeks leading up to our 25th wedding anniversary, I kept waiting for Caroline to say something. Drop a hint. Ask if I had plans. She didn't. She was too busy planning her weekend trip with the girls to Atlantic City. She said they needed a break. "Motherhood is exhausting," she told me. I nodded, even though our youngest was 17 and barely spoke to us anymore. I went out of my way to be patient. I made excuses for her in my head. She's stressed. She's going through something. Midlife stuff. I even joked to myself, maybe she's planning a surprise. But I knew better. The last surprise she gave me was a Bluetooth meat thermometer 2 Christmases ago, still in the box under the sink. The day came. March 12th. No card. No hug. No happy anniversary. Not from her. Not from the kids. Not even a lousy text. We had steak again that night. I made it. Ribeyes, because I knew Caroline liked them more than I did. Jonah ate in silence, AirPods in. Emma was texting nonstop. Caroline sat across from me, phone in one hand, fork in the other. Her screen reflected off her glasses the whole time. When dinner ended, they scattered like leaves in the wind. No one offered to help with dishes. No one said thank you. I cleaned up in silence, listening to the kitchen faucet drip between the clinks of silverware. I went upstairs. I stood in our bedroom doorway and stared at the spot where she used to leave little love notes on anniversaries. A post-it that said "still crazy about you," or 25 down, forever to go. Nothing. She was in bed already, scrolling. Didn't look up. Didn't say goodnight. That was when something in me shifted. I didn't plan it. I didn't pack a bag. I just walked to my nightstand, took off my wedding ring, and placed it on her pillow. Still, she didn't look up. I walked out with the clothes on my back and my wallet. Took the midnight train from Syracuse to Chicago. I had an old friend there from my construction days who owed me a favor. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't answer texts. Not that many came. The first week away felt surreal, like I was haunting someone else's life. I walked for hours every day, replaying moments from the last 5 years. Noticing the pattern I'd ignored, the dinners alone, the birthdays half forgotten, the way she started calling me dad instead of babe, even when the kids weren't around. And for the first time in years, I let myself ask, was this all my fault? Did I let myself become invisible? Did I stop being interesting, romantic, alive? Or did they just stop seeing me the moment I stopped being useful? A month later, the first real message came. Not from my kids. From her. The house feels empty without you. I didn't even notice you were disappearing. I read it 5 times. Then put the phone down. Because the truth is, I had been disappearing. But it didn't start that night. It started the moment I stopped being seen as a man and started being treated like a service. And maybe the biggest mistake I ever made was letting it happen without a fight. What Caroline didn't know was that I had no intention of staying gone forever. I just needed time to plan my return on my terms. And when I came back, it wouldn't be with roses or an apology. It would be with a reckoning. The message haunted me for days. The house feels empty without you. I didn't even notice you were disappearing. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had too much. Every time I opened the keyboard, my thumbs hovered. I type a sentence. Delete it. Type another. Delete that too. Nothing felt right. Nothing felt enough. Because what do you say to someone who watched you vanish right in front of them and didn't flinch? Instead, I scrolled back through old photos. There was one from our 20th anniversary. We were sitting on a bench near Lake George. She was leaning into me, laughing at something dumb I'd said. I had a fresh sunburn and my arm around her shoulder. It was the last time I could remember her really looking at me like I mattered. How did we get from that to this? Chicago gave me space to breathe, but not enough to forget. I was staying at my old buddy Marcus's place. He had a tiny guest room filled with boxes and a broken rowing machine, but I made it work. Marcus didn't ask many questions. He just handed me a beer and said, whatever it is, she'll either figure it out or she won't. Just don't go back until you're sure you still want to. That stuck with me, because for the first time, I was asking myself the question I'd avoided for years. Do I still want this? Caroline's message wasn't followed by a call. Not even a second text. Not that week. Not the next. Just silence. Like she was waiting for me to come crawling back. Like it was my job to fix things. Again. But I didn't. Instead, I started observing. Watching quietly from afar. I logged into our family's shared bank account, which I hadn't done in weeks. There were a few Amazon charges. New patio furniture. A spa reservation. One fancy dinner. Nothing huge, but little things that told me life back home hadn't exactly hit pause. Caroline was still living, just without me. Then I checked social media. Emma had posted a photo from some brunch place. Bottomless mimosas and cinnamon roll pancakes. Jonah commented, steak, pancakes. She replied, at least mine aren't overcooked. They were laughing about my cooking. That same night. The night I walked out. No, where's Dad? No, we messed up. Just brunch and jokes. The knife didn't twist until I saw a picture Caroline posted to her Instagram. A group shot. Her sister, and 3 other women I didn't recognize. Caption, Atlantic City girls trip was exactly what I needed. New memories, new me. It had been 2 weeks since I left. She hadn't told anyone. Hadn't even posted a single word about me being gone. And now she was smiling in front of a slot machine, like our marriage never happened. I stared at that photo for a long time. Something broke in me then. Not sadness. Not anger. Something colder. Clarity. Caroline wasn't mourning. She was rebranding. A few days later, I finally heard from Jonah. One sentence. Hey, do you know where the Xbox controller is? That was it. No, hey Dad, you okay? No, why'd you leave? Just a tech support request from a 17-year-old who barely came out of his room unless there was meat involved. I didn't reply. Again. But this time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Still, I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. I just wanted time to think. To watch. I didn't trust my emotions. I didn't trust myself. So I waited. It wasn't until the 3rd week that the real betrayal hit. It started with a phone call from my sister, Marlene. Marlene's the kind of woman who speaks like she's holding court at all times. Dramatic. Opinionated. But sharp as a knife. We'd never been super close. She lived in Florida, always on some cruise or yoga retreat, but we talked a few times a year. Birthdays, holidays. Once when our mother passed. This time, her voice was sharp and confused. Bryce, are you okay? I sat up. Yeah. What? I just got off the phone with Caroline. She told me you two were separating. That you walked out. No explanation. I didn't answer. Marlene's voice dropped. She said you've been distant for years. That you've been cold. She made it sound like you abandoned her. I blinked. Did she mention that she forgot our 25th anniversary? That she didn't say a single word? She said you've been checked out of the marriage for a long time. That she's been trying to hold things together. And that you left without warning, like a coward. There it was. The rewrite. Not only was I invisible, now I was the villain. I felt my jaw clench so hard my molars hurt. Marlene sighed. Look, I don't know what's going on, but if I'm being honest, I've noticed the way they talk to you. I remember when I visited last Thanksgiving. Emma barely looked up from her phone. Jonah acted like you were just a noise in the background. Caroline barely acknowledged you unless it was to ask for something. She paused. You've always been the guy who kept the engine running. Quiet. Reliable. But it's like they started treating you like the engine, not the driver. That sentence stayed with me. After we hung up, I went for a walk. I ended up outside a coffee shop and sat there for 2 hours without ordering a thing. Just thinking. That night, I opened an old email account I hadn't touched in years. The one I used for online job boards and junk mail. I spent hours digging. Old conversations. Family photos I'd backed up. Even the original email receipt for the engagement ring I bought Caroline. The details flooded back. How I'd worked weekends to afford it. How I'd canceled a fishing trip with my dad to surprise her with a custom setting she'd once pointed out in a magazine. I sat there, alone in that spare room in Chicago, realizing something painful. I'd given my everything to that family. Time, energy, love, labor, birthdays, bedtimes, sacrifices they never even noticed. And in return, I'd become an appliance. A background character. A footnote in someone else's life. Until I left. And even then, they didn't chase me. They recast me. Like I was replaceable. That was the night something shifted for good. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I started planning. If they thought I was background noise, fine. I would become a ghost. And when I came back, it wouldn't be for them. It would be for me. The breaking point, the true breaking point, came 1 week later. I'd gone radio silent. Not a word to Caroline. Not to the kids. I hadn't logged into the family account in a few days. But when I did, there it was. A $3,000 charge on our joint credit card. From a jewelry store. I stared at it, numb. Then another. $480. Boutique clothing. $270. Spa treatment. $900. Some luxury skincare brand I'd never heard of. All in her name. All within a span of 3 days. She was shopping. On our account. With my money. Like I was dead. Or worse, like I never existed. I refreshed the page twice, thinking maybe it was fraud. But the store was local. Same one I'd bought her necklace from 5 years ago. Same address. I called the credit card company. Asked for clarification. She was in store, the rep said. Use chip and PIN. Do you need to file a dispute? I nearly laughed. No, I wouldn't file a dispute. Because this wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. This was the moment I realized. She'd moved on. Emotionally. Mentally. Financially. She was already stepping into her next chapter and spending our anniversary savings to do it. And not once, did she stop to ask what I wanted. What I needed. I wasn't a partner. I was a wallet. And the kicker? The next day, she posted a photo. Caption, self-care is not selfish. The photo? A close-up of a necklace. One I didn't buy. One I'd never seen. I zoomed in, heart hammering. It was gold. Elegant. Delicate. The kind you don't buy yourself. I clicked through the comments. One from a man I didn't recognize. Looks perfect on you, see. Another, from her sister. Someone's glowing. I closed the app, sat very still, and realized I'd been replaced, or at least auditioned over, while I was still technically her husband. That was it. The moment I stopped feeling sad, and started feeling focused. They wanted to treat me like I didn't exist? Fine. Then they wouldn't see me coming. I think the scariest part of starting over is realizing how much of your identity was tied to other people's expectations. I was Bryce, the dad, the husband, the one who fixed the garbage disposal and brought in the groceries and paid for the summer camps. I was the guy who stood behind the camera at every birthday party, never in front. The man who was thanked with passing nods and background jokes. That was who I was. Until I wasn't. And now I was just Bryce. No title. No role. Just me. And I didn't even know who that was anymore. The days after the necklace post blurred together. I barely slept. Barely ate. I'd walk the streets of Chicago in the cold, trying to feel anything again. I stared into storefronts like a ghost haunting his own future. I didn't tell Marcus about the jewelry or the comments. He was already doing enough, offering me a place to crash, some quiet, and beer when I needed it. But even he started to notice. You ever think about going back? He asked one night, handing me a plate of leftover pizza. I didn't answer. You don't have to say anything, man. Just, he hesitated. Don't go back because you're lonely. Go back because it's home. If it still is. That stuck with me. Was it still home? Or had I just been squatting in someone else's life? The next morning, I hit rock bottom. I checked my inbox and saw an email from my old job. A mass update. Layoffs. Department restructured. Position eliminated. I stared at the screen, mouth dry. I'd been working in facilities management for almost 12 years. My team ran maintenance for 3 local schools, HVAC repairs, custodial logistics, campus safety systems. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I'd taken the role to be close to home, to coach Jonah's little league, to have dinner on the table every night at 6. And now it was gone. No severance. No warning. Just a polite paragraph and an offer to apply for future roles in a stripped-down version of the company that no longer needed a guy like me. I sat in Marcus's kitchen with the email open, watching the cursor blink. I felt hollow, like a balloon someone had let the air out of overnight. That was the lowest I'd ever felt. No wife. No job. No kids checking in. Just 51 years of invisible labor and nothing to show for it. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I made coffee. Then I opened my laptop. It sounds ridiculous now, but I Googled how to start over at 50. Just like that. In lowercase letters, like I was whispering the question to the void. Most of the results were cheesy. Motivational blogs. Quotes about new beginnings, and you're never too old to dream. But one link caught my eye. An article about skilled tradespeople transitioning into consultancy. It talked about how decades of hands-on experience could actually translate into something, project management, inspection, training. And that's when something clicked. I'd spent 2 decades solving problems for other people. Fixing pipes, rewiring circuits, building safety checklists. I knew buildings inside and out. I'd supervised crews, managed budgets, liaised with school boards. There was value in that. They'd just never seen it. Because I never sold it. That was the first spark. I spent the next week putting together a resume. Not a job hunter, something different. I framed myself as a consultant, Bryce, facility systems advisor, site safety specialist, preventative maintenance consultant. It felt fake at first, like I was pretending to be more important than I was. But then I started listing everything I'd actually done over the years. The programs I'd implemented. The incidents I'd prevented, the cost-saving measures I'd negotiated. And I realized, I wasn't pretending. I'd just never owned my worth before. I found a free template site and built a basic portfolio page. Listed services. Wrote a short bio. Nothing fancy. Just enough to look real. Marcus introduced me to one of his friends, Damon, who ran a boutique property management company downtown. They managed commercial spaces and needed help updating their vendor compliance checklist. I met him for coffee, explained what I could do. He hired me for a 2-week gig. It paid $1,500. It felt like I'd won the lottery. I worked like a man possessed. Rewrote the entire checklist. Audited their existing systems. Found 2 vendors who'd lapsed on insurance documentation and one who was using expired safety certs. Damon was impressed. He gave me a testimonial for my site. Word started to spread, slowly but surely. I picked up another client. Then 2 more. A gym franchise. A small charter school. An office park. Was I rich? No. But I was building something. Me. For the first time in years, I wasn't defined by what other people needed from me. I was creating value on my own terms. I moved out of Marcus's place after 6 weeks. Rented a furnished studio in a quiet neighborhood. It had creaky floors and a view of a brick wall, but it was mine. I bought groceries. Cooked meals for one. Watched old westerns. Learned how to stretch $20 across 3 dinners. And slowly, I started remembering what it felt like to live. I rejoined a local gym. Not because I wanted six-pack abs, but because I needed to feel strong again. I hadn't cared about my body in years. I was always too tired, too busy, too married to the idea that my job was just to survive. Now, every push-up felt like a protest. Every mile on the treadmill a small rebellion against the man I'd become. I also started journaling. Nothing fancy, just half a page each night. What I learned, what I missed, what I felt. The first few entries were dry, just lists. But one night, I wrote something that stopped me cold. I spent 25 years trying to be indispensable to people who only needed me to be convenient. That line stayed with me. It became my new compass. I stopped checking Caroline's Instagram. I stopped waiting for another text. But they came anyway. First Emma, then Jonah. Short, clipped messages at first. Then longer ones. Hey Dad, just wondering where you are. Mom said you might not come back. I'm sorry I didn't say anything on the anniversary. I was caught up in school, and I didn't realize it meant that much. Mom's been weird lately. She cries sometimes at night. I think she misses you. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because something in me still wasn't ready. I didn't want to be pulled back into a life that hadn't earned my return. Instead, I doubled down. I took a leap and registered my business as an LLC. Hired a freelance designer to clean up my website. Booked a booth at a regional facilities management conference. Printed 500 business cards with my name on them. Bryce, founder, advisor, consultant, not husband, not father, not fallback, just me. One afternoon, I got a message through my site's contact form. No name, just, I miss the way you used to make the house feel safe. Caroline. I recognized the writing. I sat with that sentence for a long time. Safe. Was that all I'd ever been? A human security blanket? A warm body to change the air filter and carry heavy boxes? She didn't say she missed me, just the way I made the house feel. I didn't reply, because I wasn't a feeling anymore. I was a person, and I was just getting started. One night, as I sipped black coffee in my little studio, I pulled out a notepad and wrote 2 columns. Left behind, wedding ring, job title, shared bank account, silence, convenience. Built anew, business, body, voice, value, self-respect. The right side was shorter, but it was mine, and it was growing. I didn't need revenge. Not yet. But I wasn't done, because the reckoning hadn't arrived. Not the real one. Not the kind where you walk back into the life you left and show them what they lost, what they never saw, and what they can't get back. It's strange how clarity doesn't arrive like thunder. It drips in like a leak you didn't know existed until the floor is soaked. By the time I realized I wasn't just rebuilding, I was preparing. I was already halfway through the setup. It wasn't about revenge at first. Not really. It was about control. After years of walking on eggshells, playing the provider, trying to be useful instead of human, I wanted to feel like the driver again. And if that journey led to some poetic justice along the way, so be it. By the end of month 3, I had 6 regular clients. I was booked solid with consulting work. I wasn't making 6 figures, but I had my dignity, and that tasted better than any steak I ever grilled for people who didn't see me. Still, I hadn't told Caroline or the kids where I was. They didn't know I'd started a company. Didn't know I was making money. Standing tall. They thought I was in limbo. Floating. Lost. That was exactly how I wanted it for now. Then came the opportunity one didn't expect. I was reviewing contracts for a new client, a commercial construction firm that specialized in educational facilities. As I scanned their list of pending projects, one address stopped me cold. Cliffside Unified School District. My old district. The one I'd worked at for 12 years. They were under renovation. 3 schools. Multi-phase upgrades. Safety, plumbing, HVAC, fire code compliance. The works. I sat there in silence, staring at the screen. The kicker? The firm needed someone local to serve as a compliance advisor, an expert who knew the district layout, policies, and internal systems. I called Damon, the friend who'd gotten me my first consulting gig. Hey, I said, keeping it casual. You still tight with Terry over at Bertram Construction? Sure. Want? I want in. He chuckled. That's bold, Bryce. You got a lead. Better. I've got insight. 20 minutes later, I was on the phone with Terry, the site project lead. We talked shop. He asked if I was familiar with the district. I told him I'd practically bled into its pipes for over a decade. He offered me a temp contract, 6 months, part-time, liaison and compliance officer. He didn't know I'd been fired. Didn't ask. Didn't care. He just wanted results. And I was going to give him more than that. I was going to give him a show. Within a week, I was back in my old district. Not in uniform. Not with a tool belt. I walked through the halls with a clipboard and a blazer. Contractors nodded. Teachers looked confused. The principal gave me a cautious smile. Only one person asked what I was doing back. I smiled politely and said, consulting. The power in that word nearly made me dizzy. At night, I walked past my old house. Caroline had changed the porch lights. The blinds were always drawn now. One time, I saw Emma's car in the driveway. Once, Jonah's bike was gone for days. Were they still living there full-time? Part-time? I didn't know. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. Because my plan didn't require them to participate. It just required them to watch. Step 1 was reclaiming my financial footing. Before I left, Caroline and I had a joint account. 2 credit cards. A mortgage with both our names on it. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized she'd been shifting things. Quietly. Strategically. After I left, she'd moved some savings into a separate account. I noticed because one of the transfers had hit our old account after I'd turned off alerts. It was only a few $100s. But the pattern was clear. She was carving a financial life that didn't include me, but was still built on me. So I hired a lawyer. Not one of those billboard attorneys. A real one. Recommended by a client whose commercial tenant once tried to sue him for mold in a wall that didn't exist. Her name was Lizette. 40, sharp, brutal in the best way. I'm not looking to destroy her, I said in our first meeting. But I want control. Of my assets. My business. My name. And I want it quietly. Lizette leaned back. You're not asking for divorce yet? Not yet. She nodded. Then let's make you untouchable first. Within a week, she had filed paperwork for my business LLC, registered me in a new state, helped me separate my personal and business finances, and provided a detailed audit of the marital financial trail. Turns out Caroline had been slowly spending through our joint funds. Spa days. Shopping. Travel. That necklace. Almost exactly equal to the amount she'd transferred out of our emergency account 2 weeks prior. She's not hiding it well, Lizette said. Which is good for you. I opened a new account. Moved all my business earnings into it. Changed my tax status. Bought a P.O. box under my company name. Legally, I was drifting further from her with every passing day. She didn't even know it. Step 2 was narrative control. Caroline's biggest advantage so far had been silence. My silence. She'd told her version of the story to friends, family, maybe even the kids. So I started rewriting the script. One afternoon, I sent a single text to Jonah. Would love to catch up sometime. Coffee, maybe. It was short, gentle. He replied within 10 minutes. Yeah, sure. I've been meaning to talk. We met at a local diner. He was taller now, voice deeper. Still wore those hoodies he never washed properly. He looked nervous. Hey, he said, sliding into the booth. Hey, kiddo. There was a long pause. You okay? He asked. Like really okay? I took a deep breath. I am now. He nodded. Looked down at his hands. Mom's been saying you abandoned us. I raised an eyebrow. And what do you think? He squirmed. I don't know. I mean, you were always there. And then you weren't. That's fair, I said quietly. But let me ask you something. When's the last time you told me you saw me? Not just that I was there, but that I mattered. He blinked. I don't know. I don't blame you. You're a kid. But I need you to know. I didn't leave because I stopped caring. I left because I stopped existing. That hit him. He didn't speak for a while. Before he left, he said, I think I get it now. And that was all I needed. I didn't need to turn the kids against her. I just needed them to think. Emma was next. She was colder. More guarded. We met in the park near her college campus. You're not mad? She asked. About what? About the anniversary. About everything. I smiled. I was. But not anymore. She tilted her head. That's almost worse. I shrugged. Anger means I care. I'm just focused now. She asked what I was doing. I told her. Her eyes widened. You started your own company? I did. Wait, like a real one? No. I said deadpan. A fake one. I print my own Monopoly money and sell it to squirrels. She rolled her eyes. Okay. That's kinda badass. We talked for an hour. Before she left, she asked if I'd come home for dinner soon. I will, I said. But not empty-handed. That was the next step. The house. It was still technically half mine. Mortgage split. Ownership equal. But I didn't want the house. I wanted the stage. Because nothing drives a point home like walking back through the front door not as a stray husband, but as a man with leverage. So I waited. Until one night, Caroline called me. Not a text. A call. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message. Bryce. We need to talk. About everything. The kids miss you. I miss you. I think we both made mistakes. Can we just sit down? Please. I didn't call back. Not yet. Because she wasn't ready for what I was bringing. The final piece fell into place 2 weeks later. Lizette handed me a packet. Inside, the full financial audit. Her spending. Her asset movement. A breakdown of every transaction tied to our shared funds since I left. All sourced, labeled, time-stamped. She flipped the final page and smiled. This, she said, tapping the last document, is your trump card. Use it wisely. I stared at it. The numbers didn't lie. She had turned our savings into her runway for reinvention. And now? Now it was my turn. Not to scream. Not to beg. Not even to punish. But to arrive. Calm. Prepared. And holding every card. The setup was complete. Revenge doesn't always look like fire and brimstone. Sometimes it's quiet. Precise. Cold. Like a winter wind slipping under a door. That's how I wanted mine to be. Because after everything, after the silence, the erasure, the years of being dad the steak guy, and honey, can you fix this? I didn't want to destroy anything. I wanted them to understand. To look at me and see me for the first time in years. And realize they could never unsee me again. It started on a Sunday. Caroline texted again. Dinner this weekend? Just us? Please. She'd sent messages like that a few times now. Little breadcrumbs of reconciliation. But always vague. Always on her terms. This time I replied. Friday. 7 p.m. I'll bring dessert. The plan was already in motion. Lizette finalized everything on Thursday morning. My business was now fully divorced from any shared assets. The house's equity split had been assessed and documented. Every dime Caroline had spent from our joint accounts had been itemized. I wasn't trying to sue her, but I wanted her to see it. To sit across from me and look at the ledger of her own choices. That afternoon, I dropped by the house unannounced. She opened the door wearing a loose sweater, hair up, no makeup, looking the way she used to on weekends when we'd drink coffee together on the porch and talk about nothing. Hey, she said, surprised. Hey, I replied. Wanted to check something about the roof before winter hits. She blinked. Oh, sure. I walked past her, into my own home, like a ghost returning to haunt the halls he paid for. Everything was cleaner than I expected. She'd redecorated slightly, new throw pillows, different table runner, one of those overly fancy scented candles with a French name. I climbed onto the roof, checked the gutters, noted a minor crack in the flashing by the chimney. But mostly, I just needed to see it again. To feel it. To say goodbye in my own way. Before I burned the bridge. Friday came. I arrived at 6:58 p.m. Box of pastries in hand. Button-up shirt. Clean shave. Smelling like cedarwood and quiet confidence. She opened the door slowly, eyes scanning me top to bottom. You look, she hesitated, good. Thanks, I said. Smells like rosemary chicken. Your favorite. Funny how that works. We sat down at the same table where I'd grilled steaks for my silent anniversary. The same table where I'd left my ring on her pillow. Jonah was home. He came downstairs, gave me a weird half hug, and mumbled, Hey, Dad. Emma arrived 10 minutes later. She looked nervous. Caroline served dinner like it was a peace offering. Wine was poured. Plates were passed. They tried small talk. Jonah talked about senior year. Emma mentioned job interviews. Caroline said, It's nice having everyone together again. I nodded, then pulled out a folder from my bag, slid it across the table. This, I said, is a record of every financial transaction since I left. They all stared. Caroline reached for it slowly. I'm not here to fight, I said. I'm here to close the book. She opened the folder. Read the first page. Her eyes froze. Then she flipped to the next. And the next. Emma leaned over to peek. Jonah craned his neck. What is this? Caroline finally asked. It's a full audit. Every dollar spent. Every account touched. Since the day I walked out. I didn't know you were keeping track. That's the problem, I said, voice even. You never knew. Never thought you had to know. You assumed I was gone, and the resources were still yours. I thought we were still married. We were, I said. Legally. But spiritually? Emotionally? You left long before I did. You just didn't pack a bag. Jonah cleared his throat. What's happening? I looked him in the eye. Your mother has been living like I was a memory, using joint funds, buying gifts, booking trips, all while telling people I abandoned her. Caroline turned red. I never said you abandoned me. Marlene called me in shock. I said, because you spun a version of the story where I walked out without warning. You never mentioned forgetting our 25th anniversary. You never told her, or anyone, what really happened. I didn't want to embarrass the family. No, I said. You didn't want to own your part. Silence. Emma looked between us. Is this why you've been gone so long? I turned to her. This, and 1,000 little things. Things you didn't notice. That none of you noticed. Caroline tried to change tactics. Her voice softened. Bryce, I know I've made mistakes. I got caught up in my own world. I let the silence grow. I was lonely too, you know. I nodded. I believe you. Her face brightened slightly. Then I added, but that doesn't mean I'm coming back. Another silence. Deeper this time. Final. I placed a second document on the table. This one neatly stapled. A formal letter. Drafted by Lizette. I'm filing for separation. No lawyers unless needed. I'm not taking the house. I don't want alimony. All I want is a clean split of what's fair. And to be done. Caroline's mouth fell open. You're leaving me? I already did. You just didn't notice. Emma reached across the table. Dad. I took her hand gently. This isn't about punishing your mom. It's about liberating myself. I gave you all the best years of my life. And I don't regret that. But I refuse to spend the rest of them being invisible. Jonah looked stunned. So what now? Now. I smiled. Now I live. Freely. On my terms. Caroline stood. Tears brimmed in her eyes. I thought we could fix this. You never tried, I said softly. You just expected me to come back. Like a lost sock in the laundry. I didn't know you were serious. I was serious the moment I walked out, and you didn't chase me. She sat down. Defeated. I finished my wine. Stood. Picked up the folder. I'll have Lizette contact your lawyer. If you don't have one, she'll work with you directly. I paused at the doorway. Looked at them. All three. Jonah staring at his plate. Emma biting her lip. Caroline silently weeping. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel triumphant. But it felt right. And that was enough. That night, I walked through the old neighborhood one last time. The leaves were falling. The wind sharp. The air smelled like November, the beginning of the end. I passed the park where I used to push Jonah on the swings. The cafe where Caroline and I had our first coffee date. All memories now. All dust. My phone buzzed. A new message. From Caroline. I read the folder again. You were always more generous than I deserved. I didn't reply. Some things don't need closure. Some people just need silence to hear their own echoes. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. No fights. No drama. She didn't contest a thing. The kids visited separately. We met in diners and bookstores and city parks. Slowly, they started seeing me not as the man who left, but the man who chose to live. Jonah called me one night and said, I'm proud of you. Emma sent me a picture of her first paycheck with the caption, started adulting. Don't worry, I'm not blowing it all on scented candles. We laughed, but we also healed. Bit by bit. I moved into a loft with tall windows and exposed brick. Got a cat named Diesel. Bought a record player and started collecting old vinyls. I'd sit by the window, sipping coffee, listening to Otis Redding or Sinatra or whatever felt like truth that day. My company grew. I hired 2 contractors. Gave lectures at a trade conference. People listened to me now, not because they needed something fixed, but because they saw value in what I knew, what I was. Sometimes, I still pass the train station where I left that night. The same one I boarded with nothing but a wallet and a broken heart. And every time I do, I remember the silence, the scrolling phone, the steak dinner, the untouched wine, the ring on the pillow, and I smile. Because the man who boarded that train, he vanished that night. But the man who returned, he was born in that silence, rebuilt from it, and he will never be invisible again. Not to anyone, especially not to himself.